Okay, this video will show how to create a question format in Scratch. We're using the web-based editor, not the application, so make sure you've done that. And remember to open your Scratch file from the Scratch website. You cannot open it from Google Drive, and you cannot open it from the download bar at the bottom of Chrome or the desktop or anywhere else. So what we're going to have is, in this game I've set up a maze. So we've got a corner where you have a decision to go up or down. There's some little spikes of doom up here, and then down is the correct way to go. I'm going to program this bat to ask a question of Scratch the Cat when the two sprites touch each other. So the bat is going to be asking the question. So first I will make sure I'm selecting the bat and my sprites down at the bottom. And I'm going to go to my scripts. And like everything else, I need to start off with an event. So I'll go to my events subcategory, and I'm going to choose when a key is pressed. I'm going to choose when I press the right arrow, because Scratch will only be using the right arrow to walk into this bat. They wouldn't be coming down, they wouldn't be coming up or from the left. So whatever key you have programmed for the motion of going right is what you would want to choose over here. What I'm going to do next is go to Control, because I want to control when this action happens. I don't want it to be every single time I press the right arrow. So I'm going to use the if-then box right here. I'm going to drag that up and connect it. So right now, over here I have, when I press the right arrow, if something, then something. I'm going to go to Looks to program my question itself. So I will drag in a say box. I'm using the say box that has the timer, so I can adjust how long this stays on the screen. And I'm going to write my question. I've chosen 2 plus 2 equals question mark. Now for the something in this spot here, I currently have, when I press the right arrow, if something is true, then say this statement. For that something, for this diamond-shaped box, I'm going to go to Sensing, and I see all of these diamond-shaped objects. So any of those will fit into this box. I'm going to choose the touching sense. So I click over here, drag it in. From this menu, I can select things it can touch, such as the mouse pointer, the edge of the screen, arrow 1, which is one of my sprites, or sprite 1, which is Scratch the Cat. So I will click on sprite 1. So now this says, when I press the right arrow, if I'm touching sprite 1, then say this. So let's test that out. So I'm holding down my right arrow. I'm actually pressing it, not holding it down. And when the whisker of Scratch touches the bat's wing, 2 plus 2 equals question mark shows up. Okay, so that's the question. We also have the answer that we need to program. So let's drag Scratch back over here. Making sure we have Scratch selected, because Scratch will answer the question, we're going to do something incredibly similar to asking the question. We again go to Events, and we're going to drag in when the space key is pressed, which we will change to the answer. 2 plus 2 is 4, so we will select 4. Control, we're going to use the exact same if-then box. Sensing, we're going to use the touching sense again, but instead of the bat touching Scratch, this will be Scratch touching the bat. So we choose bat from that choice menu. Back to Looks, drag in our say with a timer, and here you can have it say whatever you want. I'm going to have it say 4 because that makes sense to me. So let's try that and see if our whole sequence works. Walking over, says 2 plus 2 equals. I'm going to hit my 4 button, and Scratch says 4. So let's just go over that real quick. click one more time. I have the bat programmed that when the right arrow is pressed, if the bat is touching sprite 1, which is Scratch, then it says this question. I have Scratch programmed to say when I press the 4 button, which is the answer to our question, if it is touching the bat, then say 4. Again, you can say what you want here. You could have, yay, you got it right. You could say congratulations. You could say awesome, whatever you want to say. So that is how to program a question and an answer. What I'm also going to do in this one is show you how to have this arrow show up to give the person a guide for where to go next in this maze. Or if you had a light bulb icon for your character or anything you wanted to show up as a result of a correct answer. So what I'm going to do is have Scratch broadcast that they have answered the question correctly. We find broadcasts in the events box. So we'll drag in broadcast. And I'm going to put this inside the if box because I still only want this to happen if Scratch is touching the bat and has pressed 4 and set it correct. So I'm going to click on this and say new message. And this is my first answer, so I'm going to call it answer 1. And you can name this whatever you like, but answer 1 works for me. So that's called answer 1. I'm then going to tell my bat when I receive answer 1, go to looks, I want the bat to hide. Once it's asked the question and the question has been answered correctly, I no longer need it. So I'll go to arrow 1 and I'll tell arrow number 1 when I receive answer 1, I want arrow number 1 to show. So let's try that out from the beginning. So Scratch is walking to the right, the question pops up, I will hit my 4 button on my keyboard, Scratch says 4, the bat has disappeared and the arrow has appeared pointing in the correct direction to go. So let's check out that programming one more time. For Scratch, I've added a broadcast of answer 1 to the answer box for his first question. For the bat to disappear, I told it that when it hears that broadcast of answer 1, it should hide. For the arrow, I have the opposite. When the arrow receives that broadcast of answer 1, it should show. The last thing we're going to cover in this video is switching backgrounds. And we go to backdrops, you'll notice I have 2 backgrounds. You cannot switch from one background to another unless you have another background. So we're going to go to this arrow and script the arrow. The arrow is going to drive the script for my background change. So what I'm going to say is, again, we start with events, and I'll say when I'm pressing the down arrow, and I've chosen the down arrow because Scratch wouldn't be walking into this from the left or the right or from underneath. So the down arrow will be pressed when encountering this arrow for the first time. We're going to use the same if-then box that we used for our question and answer, the same sensing box, and we are programming the arrow so it should be touching sprite 1, which is Scratch. And instead of saying anything, it's going to go directly to broadcasting. So I'm going to click there, choose new message, and I'm going to call this switch 1. This is my first switch, so I'm calling it switch 1. Now, for things to actually happen though, I'm going to go to my background, and I'm going to tell my background when I receive switch 1, go to looks, switch to backdrop, and you want to choose from this list the specific one it goes to. You do not want to choose next or previous, that can mess things up later on. But choose bedroom 2, that's my next backdrop, or whatever you've called your backdrop. I'm also going to tell my arrow to hide after it's said this broadcast, because I do not need it to show up on the next screen. That wouldn't make sense. So I'll say hide. So let's check this out. Let's see if this sequence works. Scratch walks down, hits the arrow, and he's in the bedroom. One thing I can also do is, because I don't want Scratch to show up in the same place, again, if it was a maze to another maze, he walked down the bottom, he should enter from the top. I'm going to have Scratch go over to the stereo. So what I will have Scratch do is I'll tell Scratch, when Scratch receives switch 1, I go to motion, I say go to. These are the coordinates he's at right now, so I drag that in. So let's try that one more time with the inclusion of Scratch's motion over to the stereo. So we'll tell the arrow to show, drag Scratch to where he'd be done with the bat, walk along, down, and now Scratch has moved. So just to recap, the bat has, when I press a button touching the sprite 1, which is Scratch, say 2 plus 2, using this if box to create this situation where it only happens if this is a true thing. Scratch, when pressing the correct answer and touching the bat, will say something that lets the person know that they've got it correct, and also broadcast an answer 1. Answer 1 allows the arrow to show. Answer 1 tells the bat to hide. When Scratch presses the down arrow and touches, when the down arrow is pressed and Scratch is touching arrow 1, the arrow 1 is touching sprite 1, which is Scratch, it's going to broadcast switch 1 and then hide. When it broadcasts switch 1, Scratch moves to these coordinates, and our background changes to bedroom.